What's up in War Eagle War Report family? It's your guy Ike Jones. We are back with another morning drop. Today, we're going to dig a little bit into how recruiting is going so far. Auburn off to a 3-2 start. How has the start for the Tigers impacted recruiting? Let's talk about it right here. Y'all know how we do War Report style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop. You got Ike Jones in here. It is Tuesday, August the 3rd, and I am joined by none other than Caleb Jones from auburnsports.com, Auburn Rivals site, today to talk a little bit about recruiting and where the Auburn Tigers sit right now as far as the board that they already have intact and some of the guys that they may be wanting to target in the future. Caleb, how are you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing all right. Be honest, I may sound a little weird. My throat is just not
Listen.
doing great.
I've been dealing with some throat stuff for the last week, man. So listen, we just got to do what we got to do, get it here. I'll be remiss if I didn't point out this little board right here behind me. This has absolutely nothing to do with the show, but shout out to our guy Drake Breakfoot, who gifted this to me right here. So it's a new addition to the background. I got to figure out now what I'm gonna do with my lighting situation with that back there. Anyway, people did not come in here to talk about my background. They came in here to hear us talk about Auburn recruiting. Caleb, you've been feet on the ground out there at high school games. You've been, at the Auburn football games. You've been around the facility. How do you feel like Auburn is sitting right now as far as the recruits that they already have committed, the strength and the resolve of those guys to stay within the class right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think if you're Auburn, you're feeling pretty good about where your 24 class is. I mean, with these classes, especially in the SEC, it's important to really get an early jump on it. And I think, Hugh Freeze has talked about this before, where he felt coming in, late 2022, you're scrambling to finish that 23 class, but at that point, you're already kind of behind for the 24 class. Um, and so I think Auburn's done a really good job just within, I guess it's been about 8 or 9 months. No, it's October. Holy cow. 10 months since 2023 started. So you've had 10 months to really get in there and start with those 24s. And I think if you're Auburn, you're feeling pretty good about it. You've landed some really high caliber guys. You've had a ton, just quite a few of big flips, not just flips from little schools, flips from your big rivals.
Right.
So if you're Auburn, I think you're feeling really good about where your class is at right now, and I think you're feeling pretty good about where it's headed.
Yeah. I think Auburn is in a pretty good place when you look at the rankings and everything. Before we get too far in the conversation, definitely want people to do the necessary. Go out there and share the video at the War Report on all social media. Hashtag get your weight up. Like this video if you have not already and you're here on YouTube. We appreciate all the likes, thumbs up, definitely help us. And then if you're over in the podcast world, go ahead and give us that 5-star review wherever you're listening. You can tune in every day. We're out here dropping content for you. Caleb, let's get back into the conversation and talk a little bit about targets. Where are the places that Auburn is heavy on the trail behind some guys, and who do you feel strong about right now that Auburn is in pursuit of?
I think obviously the number one position group that everybody talks about when it comes to recruiting is offensive line. And there's one guy who was on an official visit this past weekend who I think is a guy that if you're Auburn, you got to go out and get, and that's Favor Edwin. He's only been playing football for about a year, but he's out of McDonough, Georgia, and he's a big guy, 6'6", almost 300 pounds. This guy's going to be a really high caliber guy. I think he's a developmental guy, but offensive line, that's a developmental position. But that is one thing that I'll add is Auburn does have some young offensive linemen. They
Right.
added a lot in this last class, freshmen, JUCO transfer, you name it. They add a lot. I expect them to kind of utilize JUCO, especially and really the transfer portal to continue to build that class until some of those guys are ready. but he's a big name to kind of watch. That's obviously a position of need. They're still going to go after some other guys that are committed elsewhere. They're
Mhm.
keeping in pretty regular contact with Khalil House, who is the Stanford commit.
Right.
He was there this past weekend. Auburn's still pushing really hard for him. That's not a fight that if you're Auburn, you're not just going to give up. So Auburn's going to go after him and some other guys that are committed elsewhere. But offensive line there. I think the Tigers are looking to add another safety. There are two that are committed elsewhere that Auburn's really going after. KJ Bolden's the big name, and he really liked what he saw out of Jaylen Simpson this past weekend
Mhm.
when Jaylen Simpson just had an absolutely amazing game. So KJ really,
Right.
I think my light's spazzing. My light just went out. No, it's gonna spaz.
It's all good. You're good to go.
I need to pay my electric bill. But yeah, no. KJ Bolden is a big target, and so is Zaquan Patterson. He's Miami right now, coming to Miami. So those are the two biggest positions I think, and obviously wide receiver. That's probably your number three. Oh my gosh, this thing is bothering me so bad. I'll turn it off
It's
in a
all
second.
good.
I think you're looking to add another receiver, and Nikar is probably the number one target right now for them. Just recently decommitted from Georgia, so that's the guy you got to go after if you're Auburn. Top 100 player, really good player.
Yeah, Nikar was going to be someone who I ask about because there's been a lot of smoke in regard to him moving in this direction. So you answered that question already, but let's talk about some of the other guys that you mentioned as well. That um, I know you had an article recently where you talked to a couple of people who were present at the last game, but let's talk about the impact, I think, from the Georgia game, right? Specifically from that game. I was looking at one from Joseph Phillips. You talked to him recently about how he felt like it, but what was the sense that you got from recruits in regard to, in a loss, how Auburn performed in front of a ton of recruits that were there for this Georgia game?
Man, I don't think that Georgia game could have gone any better from a recruiting standpoint. Um, all it, Hugh Freeze and his coaching staff did exactly what they needed to do, which was show that they can coach and that they can put a product on the field that is competitive at that national level. At that, I'm gonna turn this off real quick.
Go
Hold on.
ahead.
Sorry, we're back. But yeah, no. They competed. That's all you can really ask for when you're playing a high caliber team like Georgia. You kind of show that, hey, and I think Joseph Phillips and a lot of the recruits recognize that those are the guys on the field. Those weren't necessarily the guys that Hugh Freeze brought in. As from the high school standpoint, a lot of transfers, a lot of JUCO guys that he took over from the previous era. And so I think you get this feeling of, okay, well, look at what Hugh Freeze can do with guys that he didn't even, bring in really himself,
Right.
right? There are a couple guys in there from the 23 class that got a lot of playing time, Keldrick Falk being one of them, Kane Lee another. But outside of that, it's a huge win in recruiting. Just seeing how Auburn is able to stay with the number one team in the country and kind of show, hey, look, it's possible. And I think, all right, I think if you do when you do come up short, I think it's a huge pitch is, "Hey, we're this close. We just
Right.
need a guy like you to come in, and then we're there."
Right.
And I think with the talent that Auburn's already bringing into this class, I think you've already got a lot of encouraging signs that Auburn is gonna be close to that, caliber at some point within the next couple of years once those guys get in and develop.
Yeah. So here's the question that I have in regard to all of the happenings right now with Auburn football, and this is something that I've seen on Twitter message boards, wherever you see Auburn fans congregating, is the worry that the lack of proficiency in the pass game is going to be a deterrent to potentially bringing in talent in that regard. Is that something that you feel like is a worry for any of the recruits that you've heard from? We talked about Nikar a little bit as the wide receiver coming in. There were thoughts that people were hoping, potentially that Cam Coleman would potentially come back to Auburn. Uh, is the lack of proficiency in the pass game a worry, considering the fact that The quarterback that you have right now for Auburn is not a guy that you anticipate returning. You've got Robbie Ashford, who has to come back because he has another year of eligibility and can't transfer again. And then Holden Geriner isn't really getting developed this year as a quarterback. The only thing that you have left in the cupboard is going to be a redshirt freshman in Hank Brown, true freshman coming in, and Walker White. Is that a concern for any of the recruits in regards to the pass game?
I don't think it's a massive concern at this point. I think if you're a recruit, one thing that you do have for you is a guy like Walker White who can spin it, who likely won't come in and start as a true freshman. But if you're a receiver, I mean, you have an opportunity to just see the field in general
Hmm.
early. If you do go to Auburn, I think that's very attractive. Um, but even if Peyton Thorne doesn't come back and you have Robbie Ashford or somebody like Holden Geriner who maybe starts or Robbie starts, I don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like next year. I mean, they could bring in another transfer, right?
Hmm.
Um, I don't think that plays too much of a role. Now, if you are a receiver, you definitely want to know who's going to be throwing the ball to you.
Right.
And I think that is going to have to be a plan that the coaches kind of put in place prior to early signing day, is kind of like figure out once this season kind of concludes, like, all right, what what's the question, like who's going to be the guy, or who's going to be the contenders next season? Because I mean, even if you are Walker White, that door's wide open too, I think. I mean,
Right.
it was a competition in the spring between Peyton Thorne, Robbie Ashford, and Holden Geriner. What's to say it's not gonna be a competition next spring between the same guys, plus Walker White gets in there, you know?
Right.
So, um, I don't think it's a huge deal at the moment. I think if Auburn can't bring in a transfer, or can't find somebody to really pass the ball well, or you never know. I mean, it's a long season. Maybe
Right.
Peyton Thorne gets it together. Maybe he finds it to during the bye week and balls out the rest of the year. So it's just going to be take it one step at a time and kind of see how it plays out.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. We are in here talking with Caleb Jones from Auburn Rivals, the auburnsports.com website, a little bit about recruiting. We're going to get into some of your questions here in the live chat in just a moment. Definitely want to give a shout out to rogueshop.com, who is the sponsor of the morning drop, always in here, making sure that everybody's taken care of. Rogue Shop is America's #1 online dispensary. Make sure you head to rogueshop.com using code rapport to get 15% off of your purchase, and we'll greatly appreciate you supporting the people who support the War Rapport. But let's get over into the comment section a little bit and see what the people are buzzing about this morning, right here on the morning drop. War Rapport, starting it off with Derek Anderson, who says, I feel like the UJ game is a perfect pitch to recruits. Literally just say, we are that close. We just need you. That's what Caleb just said. We'll have to agree with that sentiment. Missed this earlier. Apologize. John Brandon with the super chat, who says, thoughts on Coach Hugh Freeze saying we won't play UGA annually. I think that was more. I mean, that's not anything that we didn't already know, that we could potentially lose that game annually, because of the format of playing one permanent rival and then 7 rotating. So the one permanent is likely going to be Alabama, is not going to be Georgia. So that would mean that you don't play Georgia every year in that scenario. That wasn't some mystery that I don't know why people were making a big deal out of that. They made it seem as if Coach Freeze spilled the beans on something, but yeah. But yeah, I don't think that was much of anything. We'll see going forward. They only know what's going to happen next year, and then we'll know moving forward after that. Jonathan Boyson jumps in and says, DeAndre Carter in Texas worries me with a flip to them from what I've been reading. Any thoughts on DeAndre Carter and the potential of him flipping his commitment?
Well, anytime you have a big offensive line recruit, I mean, or just a high caliber player in general, you do have to kind of worry about flipping. It kind of depends on how he perceives Texas. I think his final three was Auburn, Texas, Michigan State. I think Michigan State's pretty much completely out of the picture at this point. So I really do think Auburn and Texas are going to probably battle it out. We'll see whether DeAndre Carter sticks around with Auburn, or maybe he does flip to Texas. I don't know. We'll kind of go down the road, see how that progresses and things like that.
Yeah. Another one here from Jonathan Boyson says D line needs some emphasis on the recruiting trail. You mentioned some folks, but are there any defensive linemen that you think Auburn is targeting that are still out there, whether it's a flip or someone that's uncommitted?
Oh yeah. Two that come to mind right away: Alabama commit Jeremiah Beeman, and then he's not committed anywhere. LJ McCray. Those are
Mm,
two guys Auburn's very high on. Auburn really needs to add another pass rusher. So adding a guy like Beeman, who we have as number 101 in the nation, I've seen him play. He's really good, really talented. Just would see the field early. I think once he got to Auburn, if he were to flip. He was there on an official visit this weekend, and I definitely do think that Auburn made some progress with him as far as showing him exactly what we've been talking about is that Auburn is close. They just need some more playmakers. And the fact that the defensive line played really well against Georgia, I think that shows a lot to what Jeremy Garrett's been able to do
mm,
in just one season. And so I think they're going to keep on Jeremiah Beeman. But the fact that he's visiting other places, it kind of shows that he's still listening. I think it's going to be tough to pull him away from Bama as it is. It's always tough to pull a guy away from Bama. You've already done it once, but doing it twice, I think that would send all the Auburn message boards and just Twitter
yeah,
sphere into an absolute
it would be a
frenzy.
meltdown.
Yeah. Um, but LJ McCray, that's another guy. He's out of Florida. He's got a top five of Auburn, Florida, Florida State, Miami, and Georgia. Auburn made a good impression with him this weekend. Just and hearing what he had to say, kind of the same thing about the defensive line. He's close with commit TJ Lindsey. The two have been
Mm.
talking about, TJ's been trying to get him to come to Auburn. But those are two guys that if you get one of them, it'd be really solid class because you already got him and Malik Blockton, and then Dimitri Nicholas, who's kind of a developmental guy as well.
Hmm. Let's see here. Corey Weber says, "Isn't Carr, Simmons, and Kane about the same size? So are those three guys close in the same size? I don't know what. I know Bryce Kane is a shorter, kind of a slot guy, and I believe Carr is as well. I'm not sure about Simmons though. Is Simmons more of a slot guy?
No, I think Simmons is more of an outside guy.
Mm.
I think I think Bryce Kane is your slot guy in this
So
class.
Malcolm Simmons listed at 6 feet here.
I think
Let's
Carr is about
see.
the same.
Yeah, Bryce Kane 5'11", and then I'm not sure what Nye Carr is listed at. I'm not looking at his profile here. I'm just looking at the commit list there. But yeah. So I mean, yeah, close to the same size. All of them right around 6 feet tall, or just south of that. Let's see here. Another one from Jonathan Boyson. We still need to be going after five-star D lineman that's committed to Ole Miss. Franklin. Any thoughts on Kamarion Franklin and whether or not his commitment is potentially something that Auburn would still be going after or could potentially flip?
I think it's something that could potentially go after. I don't think it's really that likely that he would flip or really consider flipping. I think Kamarion Franklin is pretty solid with Ole Miss.
Okay. Ole Miss in the driver's seat there. Corey Weber's jumps in. He says, "We have a shot at flipping Coleman. Closer to signing day gets here really sets in. College Station is a long way from home. Any thoughts on Cam Coleman and how solid his commitment is to Texas A&M?"
Yeah, Texas A&M, that's kind of a shocking commit, I think, for a lot of people. A lot of people did not expect him to make that decision until probably signing day. I think Auburn was the number 2 school right there, with Coleman, and, he's gonna be back on campus at some point this fall, I anticipate. But, this is going to be interesting kinda down the stretch. This is one of those guys where if you're an Auburn fan, you're really hoping Texas A&M season just completely blows up,
Right.
right? You're looking for Texas A&M to really struggle to show no improvement from last season, and unfortunately for Auburn fans, I think A&M has, kind of figured some things out. They're 4-1 right now. They had a little bit of a bump in the road with Miami, but I think if A&M, their season kind of goes south, Auburn starts trending up, and even if Auburn does start trending up, that's going to be a recruitment that Auburn's always going to be in. I think
Right.
up until up until Cam Coleman signs. This is obviously not a guy that you can just let get away without any sort of fight. Um, but yeah, as it goes down to signing day, I think Auburn will make an extremely hard push for Cam Coleman. Just with their need for receivers and already having three guys right now that are pretty talented, adding a fourth one, whether that would be someone like Nikar or someone like Cam Coleman, that would really put that room for this class over the top. And so, yeah, that's gonna be close. That's gonna be tough to pull. It's always difficult to pull a guy away from any SEC program. So if you're an Auburn fan, you're hoping for Texas A&M season to completely derail, and for
Right.
Cam Coleman to say, "No, I don't really want to play there."
Right. Another one from Corey Whipper who says we need to flip Waller as well. Speaking of Jamonte Waller, the Florida commit, any word on whether or not Waller is someone that Auburn is still in pursuit of or has any movement with?
Yeah, I believe he was there this weekend. I didn't get a chance to speak with him, but that was a guy that Auburn was real high on. Sitting there at that Jack linebacker position. They've already got one true Jack linebacker, and Joseph Phillips committed. But there's not a ton of depth in that position for Auburn, and Auburn really needs to add that depth. So they're going to keep going after Waller. Waller was kind of down. I think it was really down to Florida, Penn State, and Auburn. Back when he decided. So it's going to be interesting to. I mean, with all these, I keep saying the same things over and over again, but really it's all true. You just as it gets closer to signing day, things just get so much more exciting because you never really know what's going to happen sometimes. So yeah, Waller. If Auburn were to pull off a flip of Waller, that would be massive.
It would be a shock waves as well with that type of flip. This is something that I wanted to ask you earlier. So Stephen Bradley gives me the opportunity to do it. He said we need some help in the trenches. That would be my number one concern, whether it be freshman signees, JUCO or transfer portal. But I wanted to hit on the JUCO portion of this. What waves are happening right now with junior college folks that Auburn is looking into that potentially could be in this signing class?
Yeah, Auburn's recently kind of started reaching out to some JUCO guys, hosting a few of them on visits. But those offers are really just starting to go out right now to these JUCO guys, and I would expect Auburn to try and bring in some JUCO guys in those positions of need. We saw it last signing class with Too Tall Miller. He's
Mhm.
now your starting right tackle. So I think Auburn's going to continue to do that, especially down in the trenches. That's kind of where you're going to need those guys, right? You're going to need somebody with a little bit of experience, playing at a high level. So that's where those transfers and those JUCO guys kind of come in. So it's gonna be a position of need. That's gonna be an emphasis when they look at the transfer portal and the JUCO guys available, and they're gonna really go after those guys hard.
Cool. Legit asks about Jaylen Mbakwe, whether or not he's still interested at all. The current Alabama commit, whether or not he is a potential to flip.
I think Jalen Mbakwe, has a tremendous amount of respect for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn coaching staff. I don't think he's as likely to flip as some other guys. Maybe I just haven't seen or heard enough from him or about him, to really say that Auburn has like a chance or that much of a chance at flipping Mbakwe. I think Auburn's still going to continue to push for him and really go after him because he is a big time playmaker. If you watch the ESPN broadcast or saw any of the highlights from Clay Chalkville beating Thompson, he was the best player on the field, arguably. And so he's a guy that Auburn's going to continue to go after. But again, Alabama, I feel pretty solid that Mbakwe is going to stick with them.
Awesome. Last one here. Question here from Knox Cleveland about Solomon. Speaking of Juwuas Solomon, any concern for him flipping? Knew he was indecisive between South Carolina and Auburn.
Yeah, I think out of all of the commits right now, I think South Carolina is probably the biggest threat to pull away someone like Juwuas Solomon. That one's gonna go down to signing day, I think. I think South Carolina is continuing to push hard, as is I think Florida State. He's still good with Auburn. No need to like freak out or panic or anything. I think at the moment, But that's going to be one that on signing day, you're just really going to hope that he signs with the good guys, you know?
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Caleb, we appreciate you dropping in with us this morning. For those that don't know, where can they check out all of the work that you have going on and even follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm over on auburnsports.com, home of the bunker. So check us out over there if you guys want to get some elite content as well as access to what we like to call the greatest message board and all of the interwebs. You can also find me on Twitter at CalebJ_rivals. I think that's the handle. I don't know. But yeah, go check me out over there. I'll post my stories and updates and, just probably a photo of me filling up my car at a Buc-ee's gas station or something along those lines. So yeah, I'm over there. Go check it out. Drop a follow if you want. So that's
Awesome.
it. That's where to find me.
All right. Well, Caleb, we appreciate you once again this morning. We are going to get out of here. As always, I want you guys to make sure that you support the people who support the War Report. Today's morning drop is always sponsored by the Rogue Shop. Head over to rogueshop.com using code REPORT to get 15% off of your purchase. We'll be back at you guys with another morning drop tomorrow right here on the War Report. Like the video before you get out of here. Subscribe to the channel. If you are over there in the land of podcasts, make sure you give us that 5-star review. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.